Keir Starmer is very fond of reminding us that he's the former Director of Public Prosecutions. He was quite keen to remind us of this fact multiple times when he was running to become Labour leader, for example. Here's some footage of him doing just that.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff. And I make it clear to every member of the Labour Party and every staff member of the Labour Party, that is how I will lead our party and our movement. We will make mistakes, of course we will, but we stand together, and I will carry the can for mistakes of any organisation that I lead.
When they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalf. But when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turned on my staff. You should never turn on your staff. And that is how I will lead the Labour Party. His words there. After 3 to 4 rounds of redundancies at Labour HQ since he became leader, I'm sure that'll come as news to a great many of the now former staff there. But it's those other points that are relevant to yesterday's events in the House of Commons, when our criminal Prime Minister came to Parliament and refused to resign yet again for lying about parties and sticking pathetically to his excuse of not knowing that he had broken his own law. Starmer, of course, had a fantastic opportunity to batter Johnson. His script was well written, even if Keith's nasally delivery watered down the effectiveness of it. But here's another bit of footage from yesterday that I'd like to draw your attention to.
The Prime Minister knows what he is. And so he drags everyone else down with him. The more people debase themselves parroting his absurd defences, the more the public will believe all politicians are the same, all as bad as each other, and that suits this Prime Minister just fine. Some members opposite seem oblivious to the Prime Minister's game. Some know what he's up to, but are too weak to act. But others are gleefully playing the part the Prime Minister cast for them. A minister on the radio this morning saying it's the same as a speeding ticket. No, it's not. No one has ever broken down in tears because they couldn't drive faster than 20 miles an hour outside a school. Don't insult the public with this nonsense. But, Mr. Speaker, as it happens, the last minister who got a speeding ticket and then lied about it ended up in prison, and I know because I prosecuted him.
The public will believe all politicians are the same if they all lie. This is very true. Honesty in Parliament, despite Lindsay Hoyle's obsession with not calling each other liars, doesn't mean the public believe it. Liar is the word people most associate with Johnson, as polling has shown. But it's the comment on the speeding ticket that's relevant here. An idiotic comment made by the bouffanted buffoon overseeing Northern Ireland, Brandon Lewis. Starmer was right. It is far more serious than that. However, he then went on to talk about the last politician to be given a speeding ticket and how he knew all about it, because he prosecuted him. Now, the politician in question, for those not familiar with this story, was a former Lib Dem coalition minister called Chris Huhne, who was caught speeding, asked his wife to swap places with him so she'd carry the can instead of him, as he was facing a driving ban, and ultimately he came unstuck, getting sentenced to 8 months in prison for perverting the course of justice, though he only served 9 weeks. Now, this happened back in 2012, and Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions between 2008 and 2013. So he was in charge at the Crown Prosecution Service at the time they prosecuted Huhne. But Huhne was actually prosecuted by this guy, Andrew Edis, QC, now a Court of Appeal judge. What happened to when they had victories, I'd celebrate on their behalf? When did that become when they had victories? I claim the credit later on to suit me. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Keir Starmer was directly involved in the Chris Huhne case, in which case he needs to return to the Commons and correct the record. For this isn't true, and to mislead the House when you're berating the Prime Minister for misleading the House, lying to Parliament, as it seems he's doing here, it's not a good look to basically be doing the same thing. Now, of course, Starmer's supporters might say, well, this is just you, the bitter Corbynista supporting the Tories, isn't it, Damo? As DPP, Starmer would have been overseeing any prosecutions going. But as Starmer said in that first video clip I showed, that he oversaw 8,000 staff at the CPS, so a bit of a stretch to say he was directly involved with the work of every single one of them. The CPS deals with around 800,000 prosecutions every year. Impossible for any one person to have a personal involvement in them all. Surely you would agree. But Starmer himself has also categorically denied being involved in other cases being prosecuted by the CPS at the time he was Director of Public Prosecutions. And from these numbers, that would seem to have to be obvious. But he can't claim credit for his involvement in cases when it suits him and not others when it doesn't. You either consider your role as DPP to be a prosecutory one to some degree or other, or you don't. Jimmy Savile would be a prime example, who was not prosecuted by the CPS in 2009, a year into Starmer's tenure as DPP. An investigation he ordered in 2013 into this matter concluded there was no evidence of improper motive, but the investigation was critical of the fact none of the records relating to not prosecuting Savile had been kept, apparently in line with data protection. Starmer denied any direct involvement in this particular case, certainly a more high-profile one than that of a speeding Lib Dem. And of course, there's no evidence to confirm or deny that anymore. So again, I do ask, do you, Keir Starmer, consider your role as DPP to be one of a prosecutor or not? You can't have it both ways. Starmer said he stood for celebrating success with his staff and would do so as Labour leader too. Staff have been sacked at Labour as he drives the party towards bankruptcy. And here he is just yesterday taking credit for Andrew Edis's successful prosecution in Parliament, all to score court points over a bang-to-rights Boris Johnson. Of course, he is right to flay Johnson from sun up to sundown on his conduct. You would expect nothing less. But when he can't be honest about himself whilst he's doing it, it reduces the effectiveness and continues to add to the growing weight of opinion, evidence, and actually, Starmer is no more honest than Johnson is. A question of scale at this time, sure, okay. But when you say you want to return trust to politics, and yet the two men under our chronic electoral system who are vying to lead are seemingly as dishonest as each other, what faith can people put in them? Why bother to vote for either of them? The public will believe all politicians are the same if they all lie. Again, Starmer's own words. Starmer can't deny involvement in a case like Savile and then take credit for a case like Chris Huhne's because it suits him to. Either you do consider your role as Director of Public Prosecutions to be that of a prosecutor as well, regardless of which prosecutor at the CPS has been assigned to a given case and who that might be, in which case your statement to the House would have been an honest one, but it would bring the Savile allegations back with questions again to answer. Or you do not consider your role to have been a directly prosecutory one, in which case you need to correct the record because you've misled Parliament as well. Starmer cannot have it both ways.